Well, welcome everybody to the Warner Grand Theater. We're in San Pedro and have been here since 1930. It was built in 1930 and then opened January 21st of 1931. It was built by Warner Brothers Studios. Apparently all studios at that time were building their own neighborhood movie palaces because the crash had happened and people didn't have money. Enough people had moved out of the inner cities where all the movie theaters were to the suburbs. In LA, for instance, most of the movie theaters were on Broadway in downtown, so you had to take the red car or the tram or something up there. And theater owners realized that people weren't doing that because nobody had any money. So they decided to build them where the people were. And here in San Pedro were 2 or 3 fish canneries and the Navy and just a whole great big built-in audience. So this made sense. They built another one in Huntington Park. The bones are still standing there, but it is a gym. And then the third one was in Beverly Hills, and that one has been a parking lot for decades now. So this is the only one that's operating since then. The city of Los Angeles, between 1930 and 1995, when the city of LA bought it, it had gone through a series of owners. In the 1970s, a man had bought the theater and renamed it the Teatro Juarez and was going to show exclusively Spanish language films, which he did for a while, and it, for whatever reason, didn't take off here. And the city bought it from a 60s rocker named Lee Michaels. He did a Do You Know What I Mean? If you're on YouTube, look it up. In 1994, the owner, Lee Michaels, had had enough of owning this thing and trying to turn it into something that it just wasn't. And he had started Killer Shrimp restaurants with another friend, so his mind was taken elsewhere. He wanted to sell it. And the last 2 competing offers came from a church and an indoor swap meet. So some local community leaders went to then City Councilman Rudy Savornich and said, Rudy, you got to find the money to buy this thing, which he did. He got HUD money and Community Redevelopment Agency money, like 2 or 3 different pots of money, and bought the theater in early 95. And then the city assigned operational responsibility to the Cultural Affairs Department, who I work for. I didn't get here until 2000, and I've been here since then. In 97, the city applied for and got historical status for the theater from the National Register of Historic Places, and shortly thereafter, historic designation from the state of California and the city of Los Angeles. So it is a state historic monument, I think is what they call them, and the city calls it a historic monument. It's still operated as a movie house, although not as often as some people might like. Its designation with film distributors is as a repertory theater, which means, among a couple other things, we cannot show first-run films here. And the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs does not want to be in competition with AMCs and landmark theaters and people like that who earn their living showing films. So we generally wait 6 weeks after a film has been released, and then if there's still a call for it, it's brought in. Most of the films that are shown here are shown by community partners who have an affinity for a particular film. White Christmas at Christmas time Gone with the Wind, name a big classic. And again, it's episodic. We probably have, I'm going to say 2 to 3 a year, because it is, and your other theaters will tell you, it's pretty expensive. You got to have a whole lot of money built up. You got to staff the theater, market the film, license showing the film. There's a lot of things that go into it. So hoping you sell 50 tickets at $10 a piece doesn't get it. You've got to find a way to get a bigger audience. So the Department of Cultural Affairs is regrettably not back in the programming business like we had been before the budget downturn. So hopefully we'll get back to that pretty soon. We still have 35 millimeter projectors. We don't have DCP, unfortunately. And the 35s are Norelco AA. They're, from what our projectionist tells us, a matched set. And he calls them the Toyota Camry of film projectors. He said they're built out of iron and they just run and run and run. So that's good. There are several of our community partners who insist on 35 millimeter prints if they're available. And they're not always available because distributors and studios are not devoting the resources to keeping them up. And from what I understand, My Fair Lady was redone. The print was redone. And that ran about $500,000 to clean it up and make it pretty. So that's not going to happen all that often. So most of what we do is on Blu-ray or DVD through a digital projector. It's a laser-guided projector, so it's got a really clean, pretty image. We have 2 film festivals locally produced that happen every year, the San Pedro International Film Festival and the LA Harbor International Film Festival, that is now celebrating its 20th year in 2023. And they show a weekend, usually 3 to 4 days of features and documentaries and specialist films. Films by New Filmmakers LA, which are a series of short films as young filmmakers are getting training from this group. They put up on screen what they do. It's usually 2 to 5 minute short films, and they're pretty good. They really are. I think the biggest event we had was a talk by Jane Goodall. She is now a climate activist. Before, she was an activist for chimpanzees. She was introduced that evening by Betty White, and Tippi Hedren was here. So it was just an absolutely enormous event. We did not realize the potential audience for this, where we weren't prepared for the influx of people who came in. We were stuffed full of people. People were sitting on the stairs and sitting on each other's laps and stuff because it was Jane Goodall. And I have never seen a bigger audience in this theater or a quieter audience. She's very soft-spoken, and people were leaning forward to hear everything she had to say. It was just phenomenal to watch. She is a delight. She likes scotch. She said she and her mother used to sit out on the veranda or something every evening at 7 o'clock with a jigger of scotch. So everywhere she goes, everybody gives her a bottle of scotch. And she said she just takes them like ketchup bottles and pours the last one into the next one. And has a great time. We are going to close in April of 2023 for an estimated 2 years for some major renovations that are long overdue. One of which is a 4-stage elevator that will get from the booth the projection booth all the way down to one floor below us where the restrooms are. All theaters of this type, all were built with not enough restrooms. It just wasn't a thing because they were built as movie houses. So you could get up and go to the restroom whenever you wanted to and come back. You didn't need a ton of them. But since we are predominantly a live event venue now, we do need more, especially for intermissions. So all these chairs were covered in red, white, and green vinyl, which by the time the city got here, there wasn't heating and air conditioning, so the vinyl had gotten hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, and it was like sitting on ice skates when you were here. So this was one of the projects our friends group, Grand Vision Foundation, conducted, which was an Adopt a Seat campaign that was so successful, again, here in the community of San Pedro, that they were able to, this is a recreation of the original fabric from 1930. All of the arms and frames, seat frames are original and were repainted, redipped. In our lobby, that beige paint is going to be taken off of, and I'm going to say this too simplistically. Their process is to heat the top layer of paint, and then they use like silly putty or biscuit dough to rub that top layer off, leaving the mural work inside, which they'll then restore. And they estimate that will take about 18 months, and so I estimate that'll take about 2 years to do. And while that's going on, we need to rebrand the theater. We need to remarket it. I got a drone for someone at Christmas, and it came in a 2-pack, so I got one that I'm going to use to fly around this place while the work is being done and just put on the web, here's the work that's being done, to keep people up to date. And then we will have a big grand reopening, rather, and move on from there. I think the theater has a long life ahead of it. Still, we will celebrate its 100th birthday in 2031. And beyond that, the community of San Pedro is very, very supportive, and they have, each time there's a new city council person, one of the things that the community asks for from the new council person is, will you make sure that the theater stays as a resource in this community? It's a resource for professional as well as community producers. They don't want to let it go. They don't want it to go back to what it might have been in 1995. So they're very supportive. When there is a call out to the community for some reason, they're right here. So it's wonderful to have the support from San Pedro and surrounding communities as well. It helps us keep this place running.